Hey guys, I am experimenting a little bit with putting a camera on OBS. This is, excuse me, this is a little webcam, so that way I can talk to you guys. Maybe I'll try some other things to uh, kind of add around and do some graphics as I go around creating content on this channel. Uh, Oops, let's put the volume of this down because I am just trying to see the chat window and see what we can do here. So today we're going to be doing lighting setups inside of Maya and creating a rig that we can use to easily control a 3-point lighting setup for our cameras. Hey Clint Moore, how are you doing? Nice to see you here. So let's switch over to look at Maya and we'll look at how to set up that 3-point lighting system. Boom. Here is Maya. So if I create a object in the center of the scene, and I am going to switch over to some basic Maya rendering rather than Arnold rendering, so Maya software. And the idea of 3-point lighting is that we have 3 lights. And this comes from traditional video production and film. So if we have let's work with spotlights. It's kind of a good way to work with it. So we have something like a key light, which is typically your main source of lighting on an object. And then we have a fill light. So I'm going to duplicate that light and place it over here so that we can do that. And I'll rename this to fill. And then you'll have something that is called a rim light. So it doesn't take too much time to set up, but it'd be cool to get some extra control when we're working with a lighting setup like this. Let's render this and see what it looks like just out of the box, setting this up, and we can kind of see it looks very flat and even, all the lighting. Let's create a ground plane for us. So that way we have the ball on an actual surface. Let's look at the lighting now here. So we have 3 lights lighting this object. There is no shadows on the floor, and we're not using global illumination or anything like that, so it's not getting any additional bounce light. Maybe with these lights, it might be nice to have some the penumbra angle increase, maybe like quite a bit. And I'll adjust that on all of them so that we have a little bit of a fall off. So when we render, we can see a little bit nicer the lighting here. Right now, each of the lights are at 1 intensity, so kind of what is considered maximum lighting when we start off. If we take these 2 lights, which is the key and the rim light. So the one behind is the rim light and the key, or the fill light. I'm going to put these down to 0 so that we can see what the lighting effect actually has with these lights that we're creating now. So if I render this now, we can see that this is the key light. This is going to be our main source of lighting for this scene. And I am going to go in and show you guys what the fill light does. So the fill light typically is not as intense as the key light, so I'm going to bring the intensity much lower. It's going to only be 0.3 this time. So when we render this now, you can see that we still have that shadow there, but it's just filling it up so it's not as harsh compared to where the key light is. So I am going to keep that there. And then the rim light, I like personally for kind of the stylistic look to make this really intense and really bright. So when I do that, what you'll see on the actual render, that the rim light, what it does, it creates this little rim of light that stands out, and it separates the object from the background, and it makes it look much nicer lighting-wise. And we can actually adjust this, kind of move it and rotate it and whatnot, so that way it looks straight at the object, and keeping the camera angle at the same point, and just kind of seeing that little bit of adjustment, you can see how that changes the look of the lighting. Right now we don't have any contact shadows or anything like that. I just want to save on render time, but with each of these, if we were to turn on shadows, you can see that we will have the contact shadows on the ground. Actually, I didn't slow it down that much, so maybe I'll just keep it on for right now. And you can see that that looks much better because it's contacting the ground, and the object overall is lit pretty well. But as you can see, it's kind of a little bit clunky if we're trying to light this single object and we want to be able to take each light and manipulate it and move it and kind of come back to our camera angle. We could probably set up a different camera so that we have the camera angle that's static and have the perspective camera. But we want to, if we build a camera rig, we can actually set up a lot of things to work automatically for us, where we can adjust some sliders and make some changes really quick with the rig that we want to create. So I want to do that now. I am going to start off with no lights so that we can look at how I am going to set up this rig for the lights. And I'm going to open up, not that. What I want is the outliner. There we go. Can we stick this here? There we go. That's what I want. So this is going to be our ground. And this is going to be our object. So now that I have that, I am going to create our first light. So I'm going to go to create light, and I will stick, let's do an area light because I just like the effect of an area light a little bit better. And this is going to be my key light. So with the key light now, what I want to be able to do is kind of adjust the depth back and forth with the control. And also, once I get the depth, I want to be able to adjust the rotation around this object and then the tilt at what elevation we have it to that object. So an easy way to do that is to be able to group that light. So what the group does is it gives you a secondary point that you can rotate from. So I'm going to call this the key group. There you go. So if we select the light now and move it back, you'll see that if we select the key group, it's still at the origin here. We can rotate it, and it's going to actually rotate and aim still towards this same object. And then if we rotate this way, we can actually get the tilt as well. So we get a lot more functionality than we did a moment ago. And a lot easier to be able to aim and target everything. So that is great. I am going to duplicate this a couple more times, and I will rename these. So I'm going to have the rim group. And then I am going to have the rim light. Then this is going to be my fill group. And this will be the fill light. There we go. So we have 3 groups. All of them we have an individual control that we can control it from the bottom. So I'm going to kind of spread it out like we have your typical 3-point lighting system. Another thing that we can do to be a little bit more organized, and it actually in the end will give us more control, is to group all of these together. So I'm going to call this my master 3-point light group. So now that I have that group, I can actually select it all as a whole and move it and reposition it if I need to. So that makes it pretty functional. So that way we can, like, maybe we don't want everything to aim towards the bottom of the sphere, but we want the center of the light to actually focus on the center of the sphere. So we can do that. I'm going to zero it out for right now. We don't want to necessarily be able to select the group this way. We want to be able to control it with other objects within the scene. One way that is common to do that is to have a curve that controls everything. So I'm going to call this the master 3-point lighting control, and I will parent that group to that control. So now we have an actual physical object in the scene that we can actually select and move and manipulate. Also, we're going to add other attributes to this because we, again, don't want to necessarily need to go in and adjust each individual item here, but we want to be able to control it from this master control. Clint, let's switch over really quick so I can talk to you. Boom, camera. There we go. So yes, Clint, we can actually use all the stuff that we build in here and with the 3D printer. It doesn't connect directly to the 3D printer. You do need a 3D printing software, something like Simplify 3D, which will actually be able to convert that into information that the 3D printer does understand. But here in Maya, we can actually build anything that we need to be able to be 3D printed and export it into a format that the 3D printing software would understand. Typically, 3D printing software, what it does is separate layers so that it knows how to print things. You don't actually build things in there. You would need a 3D package like Maya or something else like that that will actually allow you to be able to 3D print objects. So thank you for asking. Go back to the Maya scene. Okay, so we have this master control. With the master control and with lights in general, we don't want to scale, so I'm going to lock and hide these controls here. Hello, hello, Unorthodox D. How are you doing today? So I've hidden the scale attributes, but I do want to be able to control other aspects of this lighting rig within here, so we can actually add controls to this. So to add controls, we go in and go to Edit, Add Attribute. And we can give it a name, and we can set up the type of information that we want. So I am going to go in and let's say we start off with being able to adjust the intensity of each light. So we can say key light intensity. And I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to create a few more attributes. So this is going to be fill light intensity. Okay. And I'll create another one that is going to be rim light intensity. Also, Clint, 3D printing. I do have a 3D printer here at my house, so in the future, if there's something that you would like to know about 3D printing, I can do some tutorials on 3D printing, and we can kind of test some stuff out. It'll be kind of fun. Okay, so this is the rim light intensity. I have those, and I want to be able to control that from this curve. I'm actually going to turn off for right now our selection of geometry. So if we go here, we can turn off being able to select geometry. So now if I select it on accident, I can't actually select it, but I can still select this curve, and I can select the lights, which I will need to. Mohammed Boltley, good evening. How are you doing today? Okay, so I'm going to open up the connection editor, general editors, and connection editor. There we go. So we can actually drive connections from one object to the other. I want the object that is going to be doing the driving. I'm going to get the inputs from this, and the left-hand side, it's the control. To make it a little bit simpler so that we can see, I'm going to turn off show non-keyable so that we can see. And we can see that all the attributes that we just created are here. And then, for example, with the key light, we can take the key light, I believe that is it, reload it to the right, and I'm going to turn off non-keyable. And when we look at it here, that is not giving us exactly what we want, because that gives us only the transforms. We actually want to be able to get the intensity. So if we look at the key light, we only have that. If we turn off show dag objects only, nope, that's not what I want, sorry. I want to turn on shape nodes. So if I expand that, I get access to the shape node, and now I can reload right, and that actually gives us the intensity there. So right now, this control here is controlling that, and you can see that if I select the light, the intensity is now down to 0. Okay, so I'm going to do that same thing with the fill light. So in the fill light, I want to go into its shape node and reload right. And I want that to be the fill light. And we're going to control the intensity from that. Another way you can actually go into the shape node without having to show the shapes in the outliner is to be able to go into the shape node directly from here. So if you select the object and you push down on the keyboard, you'll see that if we look at the outliner now, we've actually selected the shape node. So that's a kind of faster way to do that, and it keeps my outliner a little bit cleaner, so that is what I'm going to do. So again, select the object, push down on the keyboard, that gets in the shape node. You can see that it's selected here, and that all our attributes have changed. So I'm going to go to reload right and click the intensity, except that I still have fill light selected, so I want to control that from the rim light. And there we go. So right now, if we were to render our scene, we should just see a big black scene because all of our lights are at 0, because this controller now has the intensity set to 0. But if we turn on the key light, and let's do kind of a reasonable level of something like 1, and we render that now, we can see that now the key light is lighting up our object here. We're not seeing the ground right now because of the level that the light is at. So if we take this light and move it a little bit higher so that it is off the ground, you'll see that that key light will actually light the ground as well. It was just the positioning that gave us that weird effect. There we go. So we can adjust the fill light, maybe 0.3, and the rim light to 3. And if we were to render this, we should get kind of a 3-point lighting setup. Again, we want to tweak a lot more, but this is the start of our rig to get quite a bit more flexibility. So let's try to give us a little bit more control with this rig. Like I said, I do want to be able to adjust the depth of each one of these controls. If you notice, if we switch the move tool over to object space, because we grouped everything, if we move the object or any of these lights along the z-axis, that will bring it closer and further away, no matter how it is oriented around the sphere. So let's add that functionality where we can control the actual depth of the object by controlling the transform here in the z depth. So if we select the control, we're going to create 3 more controls for each one of the lights, and this is going to be our distance control for each light. So let's go in and edit, add attribute. We are going to do key distance. Then we'll add. And then by default, it's setting it to 0, so it should. Right now, we haven't connected anything, but once we do, it's going to go to the origin. And then we're going to have fill distance, add, and rim distance, add. There we go. So we have 3 more attributes that we can connect. And this time we don't need to go into the shape node. Let's reload the right-hand side, or the left-hand side, sorry. So we get those extra controls that we just created. And we can go into the key light and reload the right. And we can see that we have the translate. The translate is how our object moves. And like we noted a moment ago, it is in the translate Z, so we're going to connect that to the translate Z. We can see that it moves it over to the origin, but if we select this control now, and we make a setting here, we can actually reset the position at whatever distance we need by controlling it, just selecting this one attribute here, or that one controller. We can actually control that. So let's do that with the other lights. So let's go on to the fill light, and I'm going to reload right. We're going to do fill light, open up the translate, and we're only going to control translate Z. And now that we have done that, we can take the fill distance and adjust the distance there. That is great. So let's do the rim light. Rim light, reload right, and put it on translate Z. Once we have done that, we can go back to the control and adjust the distance of the rim light. There we go. So we have control of the intensity of each light, and we also have control over the distance away from our focus for this control here. Okay, so let's do the rotation attribute, so that way we can decide where around the sphere we actually want our controller to be. So let's see, what should we call these? Let's say, I'm going to call this light position, and then I'll do light tilt. For the last attribute. So I'm going to add here light position, and I need to tell it which light, right? So this is going to be key position, then fill position and rim position. There we go. So we have the 3 extra controls that we want. And when we were looking at it before, what we actually want to be able to manipulate is the groups. So it's going to control this rotation here that actually ends up controlling the position for each light. So now that I've selected the group for the key, I'm going to reload the left, actually reload the right with that one, and then I have to select the control and reload the left here. Key position is going to be affecting the rotation. And what is the rotation that I want to manipulate? So let's select the key light group and see. And when we rotate it, it's actually the rotate Y. Let's control rotate Y with the key position there. We can see that it resets now. And if we go into that control and adjust the key position, we can see that by adjusting this value, it will position where around that object we want the light to be. So let's jump down to the fill position and we get the fill light there, reload right, rotation, rotate Y. That resets it there. So let's set the control and we can take that position and adjust it so it's over that way. There we go. That's about 40 degrees. And finally, we can do the rim light. And the rim light, I have to reload the group, rotate. Oops. I did the fill. That's why it was grayed out, because it was already being driven by something. Now we can do the rotate Y on the rim light, and that works properly. Hopefully. Okay. Oh, because I'm doing translate Y? Sorry. That is not actually what I want. I want rotate. So let's try rotate Y. There we go. That's giving us the result that I was expecting. So I can change that value and get it kind of in a similar position of the way I did a moment ago. So I have that set up. Now the last thing I want to be able to control here for right now is the tilt. So I can do that as well. I'm going to go in and add more attributes. Add attribute. We're going to say key tilt. Then we're going to do fill tilt. And finally, rim tilt. There we go. With that controller, we're going to reload left. We have those extra attributes there. It's going to be the key light, and the key light, it's going to be, oops, key light. We need the key light group, and it should be on the rotate X. We can see that the rotate X is changing there. So that is what we want to manipulate. So I am going to reload the right. I'm going to be rotating, rotate X. There you go. And I'm going to go to the fill tilt. And that is going to be here. We are going to go to reload this, rotate X. There we go. And finally, we need to do the rim. So we're going to select the rim group. We're going to go to the rim tilt, rotate X, and we should have that all set up. So let's double check it here. We got the tilt all at 0, but we can go down or up or whatever we want with this single control. So now we have a lot more control than we had a moment ago, but anything else you want to add onto these, you can actually adjust pretty easily. So if you wanted to add a translate up, you can actually add that as another attribute here. For my purposes, keeping it a little, or at this level where I only have 3 items that I'm controlling seems to be good enough for the types of scenes that I am rendering. So I can go in and adjust the light if I needed to. Something to be careful with is that it kind of can go through and be on the opposite side if you go negative. If we wanted to, we could actually spend some time and adjust the properties so that way they are limited. So that way we can't go in the negative direction by setting up some parameters for that. I believe if we go here into the attribute editor, we get access limit information. These are the limits for the normal objects. We can probably go into edit attribute. So let's do one of them. Let's do the position of the key light. Edit attribute. Okay, so we get the whole list here. Key distance right now, we have it that it's keyable. We don't have a minimum and maximum distance, so let's set a minimum, and it's going to be at 0 because we don't want it to go past that 0 point. So the rim light distance, we want a minimum of 0 as well. And I am missing fill, so fill position, we want a minimum of 0. So that will prevent us, if we select the control now and adjust the position, and we go, or sorry, I think I adjusted position. Distance. If we go into the distance, it goes all the way up to 0, but it doesn't let me go anything past 0. So that could be kind of useful to make the tool a little bit more manageable and not break its functionality. Did I do all the correct attributes? That is right, and I want to make sure that the rim, not position, but rim distance, there we go. This one is wrong, the fill distance. So let me go back in and edit attributes. So when I went to fill, I think I did fill position, which is not what I want. I can do fill distance and add that there. There we go. So we got this here, and now the furthest we can go is to 0. We are not able to go into the negative values. You could do that with intensity, but sometimes it's actually kind of interesting with the intensity, like to make it a negative value. So if we're actually looking at this scene right here, we can see that we have that lighting setup that we just built. But let's say we took the fill intensity and make this like a -3. You'll see that when you render this, you're actually taking away light. So sometimes that can actually be useful. You're using it as a negative light to create shadows. So I usually don't limit the possibility of going negative in the intensity. The key position right now is free, so you can actually go all the way around in a circle multiple times in any direction, and I find that works fine. But overall, I think this is kind of as far as I want to go with this rig. It should make it a little bit easier. If you create a rig setup like this, you can import it and have it light your scene for you pretty quickly. You have it as an extra file and just import this and really quickly set up your 3-point lighting system rather than having to go into each individual light and set it up individually and try to orient it and aim it exactly the way you want it. And this is really good for like if you have a single object that you're trying to showcase, but if you had a whole scene, obviously it's going to be bit more technical than this, but it's really good for lighting for demo reels and things like that. So let's switch over really quick here to me. Hey, how's it going? I hope you guys found this tutorial useful. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. I really appreciate that. That actually helps out the channel a ton. And other than that, we'll see you guys in the next video. Crazy hair today. It's really late at night, so yeah, we'll see you guys later. Bye.